Okay, so Matt Walsh is of the opinion that the SPLC has been doing some shady shit. So let's go ahead and look into what's happening here, because for those who don't know, the SPLC is a Southern Poverty Law Center. They are one of the better organizations for tracking extremist and hate groups. And, well, they got caught by the Department of Justice funding those groups. Now, that's what Matt Walsh is going to tell you, but the details of that are not quite that accurate, because looking into it, it seems that they were not actually directly funding those groups. They were funding paid informants from within those groups who were giving them the information for them to determine that they were hate groups. You know, they paid for spies, the thing that you would do to infiltrate a hate group and figure out what it's doing. So yeah, let's see what Matt Walsh has to say, and then we're going to look at what somebody with a brain has to say real quick.
Now, it's the kind of strategy that's effective because unless you're extremely familiar with how depraved left-wing activists are, it would never occur to you that they're doing any of this. But they feel a need to do it because otherwise there would be no right-wing hate groups. If the SPLC did not fund them, they would not exist. And then Democrats would lose power and the SPLC would run out of money.
Do you see what his strategy is here? So the umbrella statement is that the SPLC has sent money to people who are in these hate groups. That is a true statement. The details of that statement, as I said, are the SPLC paid informants within those hate groups to report on what they are doing. No different than if you had a police officer go and infiltrate somewhere while on his salary. He joins a group that you are trying to get information on, and so you're paying the group because a non-zero amount of dollars from his salary are going to him, and he is currently a member of the group at the time. That's how that works, you dumbass.
Now, it's the same reason that your antivirus software bugs you all the time. If your antivirus software told you the truth, which is that you really don't need to pay for antivirus software anymore, then obviously nobody would subscribe. So instead, they pester you with fake threats and scare tactics. And it's kind of the same principle, except...
So I'm not going to deny that that's something that has happened more than once. However, to effectively make the claim that you don't need some type of antivirus software in 2026, when there are more hackers and more people who are dangerous to you now than there ever have been, is a ludicrous claim. It is not exactly what he claims, but if he's going to not use what exactly the SPLC said, boy howdy, it really sucks when people use your exact same weapons against you, Mr. Matt.
In the case of the SPLC, they were having a substantial effect on American politics. And the more you read this indictment, the more you realize how shameless it was. According to the DOJ, the SPLC was paying the same Klan members that it was complaining about by name on its website. So I got to say, as an aside, I'm starting to get a little frustrated because, again, I was also listed on their website of extremists. They put me on the list. They had my photo up and everything, and I was on their hate map as somebody who absolutely must be stopped. And yet, for all of this, I wasn't paid a single cent.
Right. So, Matt, if you were being honest about what happened, and again, we're going to look at a more impartial news source on this here in a minute, but if you were being honest about what happened, the reason why they're able to report on you without having to infiltrate your organization is you have a fucking show. You have a show, my guy. If anybody wanted any information about your opinions that you are spreading to other people, they simply have to turn on fucking YouTube. They don't need to have an informant infiltrating your area to figure out what damage you are causing. They can just open up their phone.
At any point, I served as general hate without any compensation whatsoever. Meanwhile, the KKK wizards were just like raking it in. Now, of course, all kidding aside, SPLC was not offering money to genuine conservatives who are effective at advancing conservatism. The idea was to fund and prop up the alleged right-wingers who were useful to SPLC and the left. And I suspect that soon, whether through this investigation or those to come, we're gonna find out that there are a fair number of alleged conservative figures, the most embarrassing and ridiculous ones, who've been getting paid by the forces they pretend to oppose. There's a symbiotic relationship between left-wing activist groups and the supposedly right-wing grifters. And this relationship has always been obvious. Now we're learning about its financial dimensions.
Okay, so keep the pin in how Matt Walsh described this. And now we're going to go to The Guardian, which is, like with every other news organization, not impartial. Because nobody reporting the news is impartial. There's always a layer of bias. But I would say they're less biased than Matt Walsh. Okay, so the Southern Poverty Law Center was indicted on Tuesday on federal fraud charges, alleging that it improperly paid informants to infiltrate extremist groups without disclosing that payment to donors. So hold on a minute, Matt. Those aren't the words you used. You used the words, the umbrella of words, that they were funding these groups. You did not say the thing that they were actually indicted for, which is not reporting to their donors that they were paying informants to infiltrate the groups. Because why the fuck would you do that? If you have informants infiltrating a group, why would you disclose to the public that you are doing that? That's like calling up Putin and going, by the way, baby, just letting you know, we've got about 12 spies in your organization. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but they're going to be the ones who have accents that aren't quite like yours. Just saying. That's all. Thanks. Bye-bye. Like, that's the level of stupidity that you would need. An argument can be made about financial transparency. I'm tempted to use a whataboutism argument about churches and their financial transparency, or lack thereof, but I'm not going to do that. I'm simply going to throw that little thread in there for any of you to investigate if you want it. PJ Blazer says, didn't the Orange Man actually do that, though? I don't know, and I'm scared to find out. So, again, we are dealing with a person who is not willing to tell you the truth. And if you're a Matt Walsh fan and you watch my show as well, how? But also, if you happen to watch both shows, I really need to ask, how can you square that level of lie by omission and still support the guy? That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. The center's CEO, Brian Fair, said the payments went to confidential informants in order to monitor threats of violence from the extremist groups, and that the information the center received was frequently shared with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. The information gathered by the informants helped save lives, Fair said on Tuesday. Fair says, we are outraged by the false allegations levied against the SPLC. And remember, the DOJ that's going after the SPLC right now is Trump's DOJ. And if you read Project 2024, you'll remember that one of the aspects of it was to replace all of the members of the DOJ in as good a fashion as they could with Trump loyalists. The Heritage Foundation told you exactly what its plan was going to be, and they have enacted that plan to some level of success. Project 2025, you're right, 2025. I get the years mixed up. I feel old. So, the Heritage Foundation told you what the fucking plan was. The plan was enacted, and then that DOJ is going after the SPLC, and nobody is looking at this and going, I wonder why that is. Could it possibly be that the Trump administration actually benefits from having these hate groups be a little less transparent? And so having an organization that is good at having informants infiltrate them get attacked by the DOJ actually helps Donald Trump a lot, because some of these extremist organizations had a lot of people that were willing to do January 6th for Trump? Weird. What a strange set of circumstances. The DOJ leadership changes in a way that benefits Trump. Extremist organizations tend to benefit Trump right now because they are generally right-wing, and a lot of them helped with January 6th. And oh, by the way, the SPLC is getting in trouble for spying on those agencies. Doy, howdy. I'm not a mathematician, but I feel like I can add 2 and 2 together here pretty easy. I'm not an artist, but I feel like I can fucking connect the dots. The Justice Department alleged that the civil rights groups defrauded donors by using their money to fund the same extremism that it claimed it was fighting. The indictment says payments of at least $3 million went to informants affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nations, and National Socialist Party of America, and other groups between 2014 and 2023. Okay, let's bust out a calculator. So that's 3 organizations, and we have $3 million, and we have 9 years that they are talking about, right? Okay, so this $3 million needs to be divided first by those 9 years to make up yearly salaries for the informants. All right, so the informants would need to be making $333,000. But, of course, there were 3 organizations, so we can assume that there were at least 3 informants, so let's divide that by a further 3. Now the yearly salary of these informants, if there is only one per group and only one per the group's names, you gave them $100,000, which is a lot of money for a yearly salary, but can I ask you a question real quick? If you were told to infiltrate a hate organization and you were only being paid like $40,000, would you not look at your boss in the eye and go, yeah, you're giving me a pay raise, or I'm fucking off to a McDonald's and becoming a manager because I'll get paid more there, honestly. This is at bare minimum if they have 1 informant per agency and those 3 agencies are the only ones. Those 3 groups are the only ones they were looking at. If that's what we're looking at, $3 million divided over 9 years, divided over at least 3 informants, then each hate group is only having about $100,000 spent on the informants within the hate groups. And let's see here, affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, National Socialist Party of America, and other groups. So that is at least plural. So other groups, minimum 2. Let's multiply this back by 3 and instead divide it by 5. Now each of your informants is making $6,000 or $66,000 a year. If there is one informant, and we are looking at only 5 groups, because 3 groups were named and then other groups plural. Not even looking at the fucking indictment. This looks like the regular fucking salary you would pay somebody for a job like that. That's the regular fucking yearly salary you would expect for somebody to risk their life in one of these situations. What? How? How is this a drama? How is this a thing that Donald Trump even thinks he can get away with? Oh, right, because he rapes children. He gets away with that. You're right. Anyway. Old Gus says there's a difference between an informant and a double agent. FedEx says that honestly, they probably have more informants than that. Right. These are bare minimum numbers. In a world where they have a couple of informants in each agency, or there are more than 5 agencies, this pool of money gets shockingly small. So, I just... Matt, when you tell everybody that they're funding extremist organizations, but by funding extremist organizations, you mean that they're sending money to at least 1, maybe 2 people per organization, and those people are informants that are reporting back, and the amount of money that's going to them is starting to look oddly enough like an office worker's salary more than anything, I'm starting to question your entire narrative, because we can literally break it down on a fucking calculator how full of shit you are. What is the SPLC? Southern Poverty Law Center. The Alabama lawyer Morris D. funded the organization in '71, stating that a civil rights-focused law practice for people who were poor or disenfranchised. At the time, federal laws and U.S. Supreme Court rulings designed to end Jim Crow-era segregation were still fairly new, and widespread resistance to desegregation persisted in the South. People who faced continued criticism often struggled to find attorneys who were willing to represent them in court. Lawyers who were reluctant to bring the first lawsuits to test civil rights laws. Dees and another attorney, Joe Levin, took on some of those cases, representing their clients for free. Some of those earlier cases resulted in the desegregation of recreational facilities, the integration of the Alabama State Trooper Force, and other reforms. The SPLC gets most of its funding from donor contributions. Its endowment has just under $732 million in hand as of last October, according to the center. So that is a decent amount of money. You're right. But when we start talking about how much it takes to keep the lights on, all the overhead costs, all of the people who are being paid to operate within the SPLC, that number starts to get shockingly low as well. There's a difference between an organization has access to X amount of money and an individual has access to X amount of money. By the 80s, the civil rights group was monitoring white supremacist organizations in the U.S. The effort was initially called Klan Watch, and it focused on the Ku Klux Klan. It was later renamed the Intelligence Project and expanded to include other extremist groups. Many of the groups did not appreciate being called out, monitored, and sometimes sued by the center. Members of the KKK tried to burn down the Montgomery offices in 1983 in retaliation for lawsuits filed against the Klan groups. Wow. That's so weird. That's a kind of behavior that almost overthrew the Capitol. That's so strange. The fire damage of the building, office equipment, and the center's law library files. More than a year later, 3 KKK members were arrested in connection with the blaze, and all 3 pleaded guilty and were sentenced to prison. The center previously used paid informants to infiltrate extremist groups and gather info on their activities, often sharing it with local and federal law enforcement. They were used to monitor threats of violence, he said, adding that the program was kept quiet to protect the safety of informants. Wow! Wow! That's so weird. That's so weird and wacky and strange. That's exactly what I fucking said. That's so weird. Matt, how did we get here? How do we fucking get here? The indictment says the center told donors the money would be used to help dismantle violent extremist groups, but didn't include that some of the funds would actually be used to pay members of those groups. Some experts say it's an unusual legal approach. Said, that's a new way of going after a charity. I'm somewhat surprised, said Phil Hackney, a professor at University of Pittsburgh. Typically, when a nonprofit group is charged with fraud, it's because someone is accused of pilfering donated funds to line their pockets. But in this case, the government is targeting the method and intent in which a nonprofit used its money. The government is looking at the informant payments as an intent to further hate, and I doubt the SPLC actually had that intent. The law has never required nonprofits to hand donors a line item receipt for every sensitive operation, said Todd Spodek, a federal criminal defense attorney with Spodek Law Group in Manhattan. From a defense perspective, this isn't a fraud case. It's a political attack on standard investigative tradecraft. We are talking about high-stakes intelligence work where the discretion isn't a form of deception, it is a matter of survival. Like I said, weird. Weird. But don't worry. Don't worry. This dumb motherfucker, this guy right here, this absolute knob of a human being, this waste of breathing space on our planet, is here to tell you that they are here to further hate. The SPLC is actually secretly the masterminds funding the KKK and white nationalist groups, and you should be so terrified because the DOJ is going after them. The DOJ that had its leadership changed by Trump, and the SPLC is known for going after groups that supported Trump. Again, I'm no artist, but I feel like the dots are fairly easy to connect on this one. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.